Welcome to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast where you will discover creative ways to improve your health and well-being. Someone may have told you that art isn't for you, but they were wrong. Anyone can create arts for the health of it. No talent or experience necessary.
I'm just a little songbird, try to fly my way homeward with the melody, and I make the beat. Don't know where it'll take me, cause when I'm in the dark of night, I sing my way back to the light. Come along with me and your heart will see that a song changes everything. Oh, oh, oh.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Arts for the Health of It podcast. I am your host, Richard Wilmore.
I'm your co-host, Constanza Rader.
There you go. That's your last name. And
I couldn't say it a second ago.
It's true. Sometimes the
Sorry,
hardest
honey.
part of this entire podcast is doing a 3-minute introduction to the episode. And here we are.
Here we are.
Yes. We did have a great guest today, though, that I'm really excited to have you listen to it or watch it, depending on where you're tuning in. You say his last name because I'm probably going to butcher it, and I have to say some hard names in a little bit.
Sergio Navarretta. He's a fellow Italian and he's a filmmaker, and he has a beautiful film he released last year called The Cuban. And I love filmmaking as an art form because it really combines all the different art forms to tell a story. And the story in this film, The Cuban, focuses in on a character, Luis, who has dementia, and one of his caregivers who uses music to kind of bring him out of his shell and out of his catatonic state to really reclaim his personhood. And it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful film.
It's like from beginning to end, like opening credits to at like just it's a beautiful it's an art in itself, and then there's the story in it. And I love the tagline of a journey of love, friendship, and the power of music. And it's so well told, and he has such a history with arts and health. It's not every day that, when you're in the bubble of arts and health, you hear it all the time, and then you hear someone that you maybe don't think knows about it, and then they're like, yeah, this is an arts and health podcast. Yes, I'd love to come on. Like, that's my entire life. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then that was Sergio, and he has lived it since he was a kid, and he has a very fascinating story.
Yeah, it was really cool to hear his story, his relationship with the arts, how he's used it in his own journey, and then the making of this movie. What a cool story! Even just some of the behind the scenes stuff. But there's so many scenes in this movie that just give me goosebumps, and I just love it. And at the end of his interview, you'll hear where you can watch it too. So make sure you listen for the end. But one of the themes that came up in this interview was the ability for music to shift our mood and our perspective. And I have some good friends who are music therapists who designed an activity that I think we should do, Richard.
Oh boy. Do I have to sing? Am I singing?
You don't have to sing, please.
Right,
we cannot afford the rights for the songs that
or the breaking of the camera screen when I hit a high
breaking of the no, Richard.
Oh.
The activity is to develop a personalized playlist. And what this does, and it's taking advantage of this idea that music can shift our mood. So we actually have a downloadable PDF of this activity that you can go to our website, heartseeandart.org, click on podcast, and you can download this personalized playlist. I'm showing it here for our viewers on YouTube. You can download the template and it walks you through how to do this activity. But what you do, let's say that you woke up and you're in a bad mood. Okay. Like my 8-month-old was awake between 5 and 6:30 this morning. And
cat's got me up 70 times last night. So yes.
So we're
Right.
both tired. Maybe our personalized playlist will look the same. So the first goal is to name what you're feeling right now. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit frustrated
So
and
we're looking.
tired.
I need to write down like how I'm feeling.
Yes.
Okay.
Name what you're feeling.
I'm gonna write down exhausted and overwhelmed.
Ooh.
What's that?
Yes. And then you want to write down a second feeling. This is how you want to feel. I want to feel.
One word?
Oh, I mean, it could be one word, a couple of words. I want to feel energized.
That's the word I wrote down.
Oh, okay.
My other word is creative because I have a lot of stuff I have to
creating
create
to do.
after this. Yes.
Yes. Those are good words. Okay,
Thank you.
so you go back to your first word and you're going to come up with the names of 3 different songs. So the first song, you want to think of a song that reflects how you're feeling right now. So what do you think of when you think of the mood of being frustrated or tired?
Just
What
one
song
song. I'm going to do Macy Gray, A Moment to Myself.
Oh, okay. Moment to myself. Okay. Now think of a song that reflects how you want to feel. That's energized and creative. The song
what song did you pick for your first one?
I don't know.
Are you cheating and not filling
And
this
not
out and
doing
you're
this?
just deflecting to me? No,
Yes.
everybody has to do this.
That is what I'm doing.
Everybody.
Because I'm frustrated and tired. This is why. Okay, hold on. What would I think of for frustrated and tired? It's more like a sound for me. I can't think of a song. It's just like
That's the sound I'm so sorry, Ivan. That's the sound my cat makes at 3 a.m. Usually there's a hairball involved, but
it's like the most annoying sound in the world.
It's like nails on a chalkboard and pulling your hair out at the same time.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's my sound.
And what? Okay. And what's
then energized and creative.
Is that a sound or is that a word?
The thing that keeps going through my head is I don't know if I can sing the first part of it. It's by Miley Cyrus and she's on a wrecking ball.
Is it called Wrecking Ball?
I know. I can't say it without singing the lyrics. This is the problem I have.
You can't even say the title of it without singing it?
I came in like a wrecking ball. No, I can't. It's very, very challenging. I don't know. That image of just like, I don't know.
Through.
That's very energizing sounding to me right now. On a different day, it might be a completely different song, but that's what it is right now. So that's your third song in your playlist. Now you want to find a middle
third song. Oh, right. Second song we're coming up with right now, but third song at the end.
Well, okay, no, the second song we just came up with needs to reflect the mood state that you want.
Right.
And really, that's going to, in your playlist that you're creating a playlist of 3 songs. The first song we found is number 1.
Mm-hmm.
The song we just found is actually the third song.
Right.
Now, the middle song of your playlist, you want to think of a song that kind of can be a bridge between those 2 feelings. That's kind of in between that exhausted, frustrated to energetic and creative.
Okay.
Oh, he's got something in mind.
I know, because this is the thing. I'm trying to figure out so I am like a very lyrical person. Like I love lyrics to songs. But so I'm thinking of like what song lyrics are really my mood that I'm like, but then there are also songs that I just love the actual music to that like get me really excited.
Yeah. Okay. So you may have to pick.
I think I have it.
Okay, what is it?
Final answer. So number 1 is Macy Gray, A Moment to Myself, because those are lyrics of like, just give me a moment to myself. Like I would be that mother who shuts herself in the closet door and is eating like carrots. Like, just give me a second. And then my middle song, strictly for the music purposes, not lyrics, would be Nelly's "Little Bit" because I love that song right now.
Nice.
And then my last song that like I can put on anytime I like need to be at 100% is Madonna's "Music," because music makes the people come together.
Yes, I love it.
That's my list.
I think that's on the bracelet that you gave me, right?
Yes.
That was my Christmas gift.
Yep. That's true.
I look at that every day.
Yes.
Yes, and mine are ah! And then I think my middle one would be a song called "The Blessing." It's just like it's a song that I go to when I need to kind of refocus. It's by Carrie Job and a couple other people, and it's just this blessing that's actually pulled from a piece of scripture. And whenever I need to like shift, that's like my go-to song. And then my ending feeling, I came in like a wrecking ball. Wrecking ball, Miley Cyrus.
Yes.
I'm all over the place today. And that's okay. Your playlist can be all over the place. So the idea is you can create a playlist for different mood states. And then when you're feeling that way, you can just play your playlist and see how it helps you to shift your mood. So you can, again, go to our website to download a template where you can create several different personalized playlists for different mood states. And that's your little activity today.
And
Richard,
even just like writing it down, like made me excited.
Yeah, it's kind of even just thinking, like even just hearing the songs playing in my head.
In your head, and you're trying to like the lyrics and like what song is what.
Yeah.
And I will 100% be listening to these songs after I listen to this interview with Sergio.
Yes.
And I'll go to it. So we won't waste your time anymore, but go download that playlist at heartsneedart.org. Sergio Navarretta is an internationally recognized award-winning director who is fiercely passionate about bringing meaningful content to the screen. He draws inspiration from Italian neorealism, wowzers, and considers his work an exploration of the human condition. Navarretta's projects are touching, relevant, inclusive, often humorous, and most importantly, entertaining. He is currently hard at work innovating creative ways for his projects and the film industry at large to press on during the unprecedented COVID-19 crisis. So take a look and listen at our interview with Sergio. Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Yes. Well, let's just start, shall we? Now that we're all here. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I feel like I found my tribe.
Ooh.
I see arts and I see health, and I'm looking at your backgrounds, and I feel very at home. This is great.
Well, welcome.
Thanks.
That's how I found. That's how I felt when I found this field. So, and it's like a tribe, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's my people.
Arts and health is not in everybody's everyday vocabulary. How did you come across what arts and health is, and why did it resonate with you?
I think like everything, whether we admit it or not, you know, some of the themes and works that I've explored are very personal. So for me, and I don't admit this often, but it is true. In my late teens and early 20s, I had debilitating anxiety where I couldn't leave my home, and it was bad. And it's not something I speak about publicly at all. But the truth is that art for me was my refuge. Music in particular, theater, and then later film. But you know, it was the way that I communicated with the world. It was sort of like the language that I used, and it's where I went for you know, to find mental wellness and to kind of accept who I was, and like I was saying earlier, find my tribe and my community, where you know, where you can just be who you were born to be authentically and not have to apologize for it. I couldn't find that in any other field. Like, you know, my dad was pushing me into law school. It's like I wasn't going to find that in the legal career, or work on Wall Street. It's certainly, you know, it's not going to happen. Or in real estate. I just, yeah. I mean, there's so much we could say about mental wellness, but I'll let you lead the conversation. But that's kind of how I sort of that was my initial connection to it.
Yeah, I mean, we're here every week, so we're here to listen to you. So you talk as much as you want. We have every week to hear our voices.
All right. I appreciate that.
So you have this new movie, The Cuban, and I just got chills watching through sections of this. I love it so much. Can you talk a little bit about it? Can you give our listeners an introduction to this movie?
Sure, absolutely. The Cuban is essentially about a young Afghan nurse who befriends this elderly Cuban musician with Alzheimer's. So the movie begins where he's completely catatonic, non-responsive, and through their interactions and through the power of music, he starts to come to life again. So that's really what the movie is about. The impetus for it was really cathartic for me because my dad had passed away around that time suddenly at 71, and it was something I wasn't expecting. So there was that. There was the exploration of and celebration of the imagination. So that was another sort of driving factor for me. And then we were sort of exposed to this idea of music therapy through a local radio station called Jazz FM. And they had an iPod program where they were providing iPods for patients that were suffering from Alzheimer's and other ailments, but particularly dementia and Alzheimer's. And they were finding incredible positive results from just playing music that they were used to when they, at a certain period in their life. And the more we started digging into this, the more we started realizing how important and impactful music is in our lives. And I think certainly during the pandemic, we've all learned that music can take you out of any state at any time. So anyway, that was where it started, and I'm really excited because it not only shines a light on elderly care and Alzheimer's, but it's also uplifting. And I think, it was sort of like a perfect storm for the release of a movie like this. I think it gave people hope, and I hope that it's uplifting. I mean, that was the goal.
Yeah, there were 3 scenes in particular that I got like major chills from. The first was when Anna first plays music for him, and his whole like countenance shifts. And for us, that's a very familiar scene. One of the units that we work with virtually right now, of course, because pandemic, through Hearts Need Art, through our organization, is a cardiac and stroke rehab unit. And so it's a similar thing where there will sometimes start a music session and a patient is agitated or just kind of catatonic, like not really looking around. But as soon as we start playing music that is familiar to them, like the whole energy in the room shifts and people kind of come alive in a completely different way. And so I love that scene in the movie. And I'd love to hear, in your research, did you get to witness this happen in person or see videos of it? Or how did you do your research around that piece of the storytelling?
Well, it's a great question. It really started with Alessandra Piccione, the writer. She started meeting with top doctors and researchers in the field. And what they presented me initially were videos that they were using for research purposes at Baycrest Hospital in Toronto. And the more I would see this like coming to life, the more confidence I got in terms of having to approach something so remarkable. In order for me as a filmmaker to pretend it, I had to see it and witness it for myself. And then I met this woman, Kim, and she has a husband who has Alzheimer's, and his name's Raul. He's an Argentinian filmmaker, artist, Renaissance man, poet. So I went to visit him, and I was sort of like a fly on the wall. I was sitting in the corner, and I just saw their interaction. She started humming music, and then she had a little tape recorder, started playing music to him, or with iPhone, I can't remember. But I was so focused on his reaction, and he just like came to life. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I said, it appears that you had the most incredible, most idyllic relationship. Like it's something out of a movie.
Aw.
And she said, no, we have a tumultuous relationship. And in some ways, the dementia took the edge off. She said he doesn't have the angst that he used to have, or the anxieties around being an artist, and the insecurities around that, and the uncertainty, and all the things that I guess he had gone through in his life. And in a way, this was sort of like, a golden chapter in their life. It was strange because that was the first time I had heard someone articulate it in such a positive way, in such a beautiful way. And after that experience, I was off to the races. It was sort of like, then it was just negotiating with my editor in the editing room, like, how far do we go? When do we pull back? When does he become more responsive? Those are things. I mean, he gave an incredible performance. Lou Gossett Jr. is a living legend. So it starts with that. It's just him delivering options, like amazing, amazing options. And then in the editing room, we sort of shaped it. That was the trickiest part. We knew that if that didn't work, it'd blow the whole movie. So we had to make it realistic and truthful.
Oh, in my book, you nailed it. That was great.
What was your initial reaction when you first heard that about this movie, or were you signed on right away? Like, as soon as you heard that, heard the story and heard because it's so, I don't know, it seems so personal. It seems like it could come right from, you could have written it, or so many people could have written this same story, because music does that with people.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I was involved since the inception, so it was really written for me, for the actors, we sort of all participated in the development of it. So there's a piece of us, each of us in the movie, for sure. Some of it subconscious, some of it very conscious. I didn't realize the Alzheimer's piece. It must have been a decade ago. I had met a relative in a nursing home, and she had mistaken me for a soldier in World War II. And she stood up and played out this whole scene, and I'm just sitting there witnessing it. And that struck me so much that I thought one day I'd love to make a film about this. But I didn't make the connection until way later, after the film was released, that, there was a part of that. And then the Cuban part is really it's an homage to my dad, because he was obsessed with Cuba, and we used to have a lot of debates and arguments about it. The whole politically, right? Because he was very left-wing socialist, communist, and I used to go nuts just having those discussions with him. So yeah, after he passed, I said, it's unfortunate that he had never traveled to Cuba. Yet he had all these posters on his wall in his office. And so anyway, that was a way for me to discover it for myself. And I went in with some really firm ideas about what I thought it was. And then I was completely wrong about all of it. It's just such a magical place, that somehow they've been able to transcend racial barriers, financial, social barriers, and they all come together as one culture. And they're very proud people, and very, very welcoming, very warm culture. So I learned.
Because you got to film on location for part of this, right?
Yeah, we filmed in Havana, and just for 1 week of filming, it took us a month of prep. So that, to give you kind of a sense of how difficult it is and challenging it is to shoot there. But what it taught me is I used to think I needed to control everything as a director. I needed to go in with ideas, and I'm gonna do this. This is about me. I'm gonna make this film, And then I realized after the experience that it's really a process of letting go and getting out of the way, and just being a channel for it, and letting it happen, if that makes sense. While I guess while corralling and while puppeteering, there's some magic that happens that if you're open to it, you could surprise yourself. And that's what happened to me. I think in Havana, I transformed. Some of those scenes, I kind of made up while I was there, because we didn't have a choice. It was through that struggle, we ended up getting things that were way more interesting.
Cool. That's always nice, right? A nice surprise.
Yeah, and I get to take credit for it.
Of course, that's what I meant to do. It didn't happen by accident.
Yeah, exactly.
That was planned the entire time.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about some of the other art forms that you do and like when you started them and why you do each of them, like what you get out of them. Because I think it's cool that you started with music and now you're making films and like how that kind of progressed, because that's a lot to take on and that's a lot of learning, but why it was important for you to kind of dabble in a lot of things.
I guess the 30,000 view answer is that every time I did something that made me uncomfortable, I had an opportunity to grow. So I've done crazy things like dance on stage in a bikini in front of people. I've done like not so. I know.
Do we have photos of that? Is there video?
Yes.
Let's roll that, Ivan. Roll that video.
I've been on stage. Like I sang in a band. We did a concert in front of like 10,000 people. Things that were like completely out of character that inside I was like terrified. But I think it's all like character building. And yeah, I just get so much. That's why I really fell in love with this art form, because I really get to interact with artists from all types of, traditions and practices. And whether I'm dealing with a production designer or wardrobe, hair and makeup, the actors themselves. I studied some acting just so I can understand a little bit about how that all works. I love it all. And the music as well. Like I'm involved in every aspect of the music. Like I'm there in the studio the whole time. With this film, we recorded the music beforehand. So I was playing it on set between takes and, while I was getting ready to go to set every morning. And it was sort of like something that was wired into us that we needed to get everybody on the same frequency. So yeah, I mean, all those art forms are really exciting to me. And I think that's what keeps it interesting, because I feel like some filmmakers get obsessed with the tech, or they get obsessed with the script, or what. For me, I just love it all, and it keeps me interested and stimulated throughout the whole process.
Have you ever been afraid to try something, or are you just like whatever happens happens?
I'm always afraid. I'm afraid to get out of bed, but I learned I learned to kind of feel the fear and do it anyway. I know it sounds cliche and new agey, but that's the truth. I'm always afraid to try something new. I'm afraid to embark on a new film project, but somehow the universe has a way of tricking me into it. Like, oh, let's just do a short film, or let's do a play. Don't worry, it'll be fine. And then it all like balloons into like 3 years of my life and remortgaging my house and craziness. So anyway.
Well, I love your description of, how filmmaking intersects with all these different types of art forms, from photography to art design to music to act. I mean, it's like all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you had such an amazing group of actors on this film. I wonder if you could talk about your experience with working with them, and if these were new ideas for them, and how was it to play these characters that were either working in a health facility or portraying, someone with dementia. I'm curious from, obviously you can't speak directly for them, but from your observation, how was it working with them and how were they impacted?
I think from my observation, it was incredibly personal for each and every one of them. So they all brought something to it, and they were all curious because of the nature of the film. I think they were all invested in it. So they asked a lot of questions. They were involved in research. Like Shoreya Gashlu, I met her 10 years ago at a film festival, and I swore I would end up working with her one day. And this was the perfect vehicle and project. When I met with her, I didn't know that her dad had Alzheimer's. So at our first meeting, I mean, she was very emotional, and she said, I absolutely want to do this to honor my father. So that's one example. And then we spent 6 months at her place, like having dinner, drinking wine, inviting in what I call my Afghan family. And we just have discussions about, just the nuances of the culture, how they would want the culture portrayed, what's important to them. And then from that, I decipher, and, of course, the writer will take whatever she thought was important and put it into the script. But yeah, there was a lot of time spent. You don't usually get that luxury in television. You just hand a director or an actor a script, and then they have to like find their way into it somehow. With this, it was the other way. It was sort of like reverse engineered, and we sort of developed it with the actors involved. So even Giacomo Gignotti, for example, from Grey's Anatomy, I mean, yeah, I said to him one day, you remind me of a young Brando. Like, he's just so invested and so committed to it and asked so many questions. And I just enjoyed that process very much. So yeah, I think even some of the actors that I handpicked that had one line, they're all like very accomplished, like, and they were just gracious enough to come on set, bring their energy and their contribution to it. And I think that's a testament to, setting out to do something that is important and meaningful versus, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do a slasher movie in the woods,
I just have to say, like, all the performances in this, down to, like you said, even people just had one-liners, were just really stunning. There just was a authenticity about this movie, and the performances that I thought were really striking. And I think it touches on what you just said about, this is the difference between making something meaningful versus just making something that may be commercially successful. Can you tell me more about the passion and what that's rooted in, and what other stories are you passionate about telling one day?
Yeah, I think from my very first feature film, Looking for Angelina, that basically was about an immigrant woman who had murdered her abusive husband with an axe on Easter Sunday in 1911. And it became one of the most sensational murder trials in North American history. And one of these stories that no one's ever heard about. So it was it was really a gift to kind of have the opportunity to tell her story. But what I learned is just what kind of an impact making a film can have. So because of that film, I mean, dozens and dozens of people were affected by it. People shared their stories at screenings. We hosted a ton of panel discussions, learning about the issue. So the impact piece was always important to us as a company, and to me as a creator. I just can't find any other way into doing what I do if I can't personalize it, or if it's not important to me. So yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I was very clear about it from when I started, that I wanted to make socially conscious movies and television projects. And, what does that mean? Socially conscious could be, could be in anything. I could make a love story that seems frivolous, but underneath, there could be some kind of a social message or commentary on, like a film I did, The Colossal Failure of the Modern Relationship. It seems like a comedy at first, and then you realize that, oh my God, it's dealing with some real life relationship issues that people go through. So yeah, for me, that's the exciting part, is really, and then it feeds my curiosity of people, cultures, and just generally the human condition. I'm just curious. I'm curious about people and what makes them tick.
You make a lot of art for sort of, public consumption, like films. What do you do for yourself?
I took up Qigong, which is and meditation.
Oh.
I don't know if that's an art. I
Yes.
took up culinary arts because I'm Italian. That's what we do. We eat.
Yes.
Like I don't know any other art form that you can actually like consume with a group of people. It's pretty cool, right? So even though I don't eat bread because I'm celiac, I make bread every couple of days, and I love it, and I share it with my family. Yeah, so cooking, like the physical part, hiking. I started biking again, which I thought I would never do. You start getting older and you think, my knees are shot, I'm never going to do this again, and forget it. But yeah, so that's what I do. And I want to start like, painting ceramics and doing more tactile things, because I think it's important for balance. And coming out of 2020, which I call 2020 vision, I realized that it's the 80-20 rule, right? Like I want to spend 80% of my day working on creative things, whether it's putting a puzzle together or, building something in Minecraft with my son, like creative that gives me joy. And then 20% I'll leave to all the other crap, accounting, meetings, whatever.
Well, first off, I have to acknowledge, I feel very connected with you as a fellow Italian that is also gluten intolerant. It's it's a very interesting conundrum when people are like, "Oh, let's go to Italian food," and you're like, "And I'm Italian, but I cannot eat most of the menu."
Yeah. Well, fortunately and unfortunately, every place, every like fast food pizza joint now has gluten free.
It's true.
It's never calorie free. It's just gluten free. Being like super high in calories and not good for you. But yeah, it's okay. I mean, I went to Italy last year and I was fine. Like there's always, like, in fact, I think 10 years ago, they were the first country in the world that had gluten-free everything in their local like pharmacy. They always had a section. And there's even a subsidy for celiacs. Like I think you get so much every month to go buy your gluten-free stuff. So they're very food is important to Italians for some reason.
It's true.
Where do you live?
Generally, so I split my time between LA and Toronto, but since the pandemic hit, I haven't been back to LA. So I'm in Toronto right now.
So what are the arts like in Toronto compared to LA? What's that like?
I think it's a vibrant community. I think it's interesting. We're always striving to be New York, of course, or Chicago, or even in film LA. Like there's always this kind of like insecurity that we're so close geographically to Big Brother, but I think we're finding our voice and giving ourselves the permission to express ourselves, which is important because we're traditionally a very conservative culture, and the arts was never like a super big priority, especially among immigrant groups and immigrant families that are just trying to survive. The arts is sort of like an afterthought or a hobby or something you do when you have the luxury to do it. But that's all changing, and I'm really excited about that. We have incredible arts organizations, art schools, and I think music in some ways has paved the way. Like Canadian musicians have blown up all over the world. So that's kind of put a bit of a spotlight on Canada.
Thank you, Justin Bieber.
Yes. Well, don't forget Drake. I discovered Drake in New York. I was like at a restaurant. The waiter's like, "Man, you're from Toronto? Do you know Drake?" And I go, "Drake? Who?"
Oh.
I'm going to need a last name. I don't know.
Yeah. Now I listen to Drake in the shower. It gets me pumped in the morning. Well,
I think music is one of those definitely like easy access ways to improving your health when you don't even realize it. Like I'm a get up in the morning, turn on music right away. And like that, and you don't even realize necessarily, or maybe you do, and I'm just behind the times because whatever, but like why you're doing it, like you can casually say like, "Oh, that put me in a really good mood." But like what that actually does to you and your health is so fascinating just by listening to music. So easy.
Well, there are studies on this stuff. I mean, they're studying frequencies and how they affect us, our physiology, our biology. I mean, when medicine and hospitals start studying it and implementing it in their treatment programs, that's when you know that, we're onto something huge. And I think it's only the beginning, Yeah,
I love what you said, Richard. Like it's something that I think we instinctively do, and it's true throughout human history that the arts are this technology that we deploy to return to psychological and social equilibrium. It's just something that we have always used to kind of regulate, to express ourselves, all those things. And I feel like sometimes in arts and health that we're just going around being to people like, duh. Like we're just like the duh police. Like here's the study that gives you permission to do the thing that your instincts are already telling you to do. And I'm just struck by this thought of how music enlivens dementia patients and kind of helps their personhood reemerge in a very unique way. And it just makes me think how much of our own personhood, those of us even with that don't have dementia, how much of our own personhood is connected to music and the arts, whether we know it or acknowledge it or not. And I guess I would be curious on your take about the role that the arts could or should play in our society.
Well, there is a famous quote that a society without art ceases to exist. It sounds dramatic, but it is absolutely a fact. And when I delve into my own history, and when I've been back to places like Pompeii, that were thriving societies 2,000 years ago, you had your amphitheater, you had your art and culture, paintings everywhere, your brothel, your fast food joints. Like, life was good. They even found a way to they had like water bills 2,000 years ago. So it's crazy. It's like, but the point is, like, I think art has always played a fundamental role. When you go back to the ancient Greeks, and that's where our traditions come from. So I sometimes wonder, I've always been curious about how much information, feelings, memory comes from our DNA, like how much is actually wired into us, and how much is innate and how much is learned. Because when I was in university, it was all about everything's learned. It's your environment, your parents, and I don't know. I saw this Aboriginal healer once, and he said, you carry the wisdom, the burden, the pain of generations of your ancestors. Right? So when you think about that, it's like, when I wake up in the morning, am I just feeling my feelings, or is there more to it? There's something deeper going on. So yeah, I think just generally, art has the ability to enrich our lives and make us better as humans. And as like capitalists try to suppress the arts, I mean, there's an economic impact to that. Take the arts out of schools, government too. It's the first thing they shrink is creativity and arts. Why don't they shrink, like, geography, and we'll figure it out on YouTube or Google. Give us more art,
Especially post-COVID, like the arts are such an important part of how we have survived and coped with COVID, and how I think it will be an important part of our recovery. And I'm curious a little bit about how COVID impacted the release of this film, and how you've coped during this time.
Yeah, it's something I hadn't had time to think about until a few weeks ago. Because we sort of, like, in March, we were coming off a great festival run, and it was all very exciting. And then I was in LA, and I started seeing people come off planes from China with masks on in the hotel. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is not going to end well. And then, so I came back to Toronto, and then we had a week where we had to decide, do we shelve the movie and no one ever sees it, or do we find creative ways to forge on and find an opportunity in it? And what ended up happening is we found drive-in theaters that were still open in Canada. So we did a road show. We just mounted a road show and started, like, taking the film around and bringing it to people safely. And it brought people so much joy. It was so beautiful to see families out again. So that happened. And then we're like, well, there's no other films being released in America. Why don't we release it? And there was resistance, because with everything new, there's always resistance. So it ended up opening in like 50 cities in the US. Some of them were like, real hardtop theaters that had to pivot and then suddenly became virtual. So, it wasn't the ideal. I would have loved for people to see it on a big screen in the dark together. But they saw it this way. And then it ended up, like, going all the way to running the Oscar nomination race, which, and featured in Time Magazine and, like, the trades. It was, like, amazing. So in the midst of tragedy, in the midst of adversity, we found sort of an opening in the industry where things were a little quiet on the film side. So for us, it was like a silver lining. And I don't think as many people would have seen it or appreciated it pre-COVID. So yeah, it was a big learning for us. And for me personally, it was, you know, some days I feel like I'm on top of the world. Like we're in a renaissance period, a reset. We're going to come out stronger and better. And then some days I just don't want to get out of bed, you know? So it's, I think everyone's feeling that, just kind of like that flip-flop thing. I've been in several rooms in Clubhouse recently. This woman chimed in just out of the blue. I was just sitting there kind of like silently in the corner listening in. And she just started crying, saying how much this film, The Cuban, meant to her. And I was just like, wow. So like, sometimes we operate in our bubble, not really realizing how many people we're actually affecting with our words, with our art, and with our actions. So, so it's an interesting time. I think what's interesting about it is that we're all in it together and we're all feeling the same feelings at the same time, like going through those stages of grief and trying to figure out how we can come out better. And I don't know, personally, normal wasn't working for me. I don't know about you all, but you all.
We're in Texas. It's y'all.
It's y'all. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to go back to normal. How are you feeling about it?
Oh, he turned the table now, asking us questions.
Oh my gosh. I love, you know, this podcast is one of those silver linings of COVID, where we've been talking about it forever, but haven't given it the energy and the time. And then suddenly you had the time and we were like, oh, no, this is when it should happen. So I think there are a lot of things that are going to hopefully stick around because they're such a benefit and we never would have done them without it. Not that I want like another COVID, but you know, there's like, we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about ourselves and community and the world and coming, you know, like I hope a lot of stuff changes. That's one of the things I said about when COVID happened and everyone was on their balcony singing to each other, strangers, and everyone was live streaming their artwork for free and just like, take this. This is what I have to give. And I hope that never goes away because look at what we turned to at the beginning. Like when it happened, we went right to the arts and we didn't even know we were doing it and why we were doing it. But there we were. So I hope
we were doing arts for the health of it.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. Where can people watch the film?
So now it's available on Showtime and all the streaming services, iTunes, and the various other platforms. And then the go-to, I mean, yeah, all the stuff is on my social media, on my Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, Twitter. And then the film has a website, thecubanmovie.com. So that is the go-to place.
It's beautiful. If you're listening, you have to go watch this movie. It's just a stunning, like, it's beautiful. I love it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
I love the visual aspect of it. Like I even like the opening like credits to me are just like it's such a vibe it builds and a mood that like you know exactly what you're getting into and I'm like oh yes, like I just want to grab it and kiss it.
I'm glad you felt that way. Listen, this is a team sport. It's a collective art form. So behind every piece, including the opening credits, was a visual artist or some type of artist. You know, we didn't talk about like Hilario Duran, who's an incredible musician, world-class pianist, Grammy nominated. Like he did the music. So yeah, what a gift to be in the presence of greatness, and it's enriching for a person like me to be around that and feed off it. So I'm glad that some of that comes through. It's important.
That's awesome. And how can people follow you if they want to follow your creative projects?
On social media, like I have a website too, sergionavarrettadirector.com, Instagram, Twitter, all those things.
All the things.
And I try to keep up with all of them. It's really challenging, but I love that, you know, there's a community out there that we're all a part of. So that's what it reminds us of. And I think pre-COVID, everybody was becoming a little sociopathic and disconnected. So, you know, I'm seeing a difference. I'm seeing a lot of people, even in Hollywood and LA right now, saying, how can I serve? How can I help? I mean, no one ever said that before.
Mhm.
They think, did you, I don't know, did you go on some kind of yoga retreat? Like what's the deal, right? But now it's become the way that the community is working and the industry is moving towards. So I'm really happy with that.
How refreshing. That's awesome to hear.
I was going to say, it's like authenticity, like not just like, here, let me go do this for a
me?
photo op.
Yeah.
It's really, how can I help? I
love it.
Sergio, I don't want to take up your entire day, although we could continue with every actor. We could talk for an hour on every actor that's in this film, every musician that worked on it. Every part of it is so beautiful. But thank you so much for jumping in or whatever you're supposed to say and talking to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, if I can go have an espresso and we can do another hour if you want.
Listen,
hey,
I just need coffee and I'm good to go. We'll do a mini series. It'll be cute.
A mini series. Let's do it.
All the notes and all the links to the Cuban will be in the show notes for this episode. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. And we thank you for listening and watching. We will see you next week, everyone. Keep creating. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for doing this. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast produced by Hearts Need Art, creative support for patients and caregivers, in partnership with the National Organization for Arts and Health. You can help others learn about the healing power of the arts by subscribing, sharing, and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen or watch. The podcast is hosted by Richard Wilmore, co-hosted by Constanza Rader, and produced by Ivan Briones. Our theme song, Songbird, is written and performed by Natalie Lane. Visit heartsneedart.org to learn how you can support our mission to create joy with people facing life-altering health challenges. Join us next week to learn more ways you can create arts for the health of it. The views expressed on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Hearts Need Art, their staff, board members, or other affiliates. All content is created for informational purposes only. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice or to diagnose and treat any health condition. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health professional with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.